There are 7 things that nutritionists do when it comes to eating that you probably don't. And it's the reason why it seems so easy for them to stay on track with healthy choices and perhaps why you're struggling. As a nutritionist myself, I'm exposing our secrets to you here today. So make sure you watch this video to the end to find out what we're doing differently. And your friends and family will soon be asking you, how do you make it look so easy? Sound good? All right, let's get into it. Okay, one thing nutritionists do that you probably don't is that they make themselves and what they eat a priority. You're not going to find most nutritionists saying they don't have time to plan their meals for the week or are too busy to cook a healthy dinner. It's not that they're not just as busy as you are, it's just that they've decided that caring for themselves with healthy food is a non-negotiable priority for them. They make time for meal planning and meal prep. They make time for cooking a healthy dinner most nights. They make time for batch cooking ahead of time so that they always have something healthy in the freezer when they need it. They do this not by having buckets of free time lying around, but by deciding that their health is going to be a priority and saying no to things that would get in the way of that. So if it's Sunday afternoon and they still need to make their meal plan for the week and go grocery shopping, but the bathroom also needs to be cleaned, well, the bathroom is just going to have to stay dirty. Or if they're cooking a healthy meal and their husband or partner says they won't eat that, well, that's what they're cooking. And if anybody else wants to cook something else for themselves, they absolutely can do that. This making their health and what they eat a priority also extends to creating and holding boundaries around food pushers in their life. So if their neighbor or sister-in-law brings over cupcakes and that doesn't fit with their current plan for what they want to put into their body today, then it's a polite no thank you. Even if the neighbor or the sister-in-law decides to feel hurt about that or lay on a guilt trip, that boundary that protects their health is solid. It is not budging. Not making yourself and your health a priority in your life is actually one of the 5 eating languages that I've identified. You've heard of love languages? Well, different people's brains also think about eating differently, and I've identified 5 specific eating languages. If you want to discover your brain's eating language, I have a fun and simple little quiz that you can take to find out what you are. I'll leave a link to that in the description below this video. So, are you making yourself and what you eat a non-negotiable priority right now? Another thing nutritionists do that you might not be doing is they plan out what they're going to eat ahead of time. They know that healthy choices don't just happen. They don't just head off into the week and hope that they'll make good choices along the way. No, they take steps to set themselves up for success. They make time, maybe on the weekend, to plan out their meals. They check their calendar, maybe the family calendar, and see what days will be super busy and when they might have some extra time to cook. They check when they're going to be home and when they're going to be out. And based on all of that, they plan out their meals for the week. They might also plan things like leftovers for busy days. They might batch cook when they have time and freeze healthy meals to have handy for those busy days. They might make extra of certain staples like brown rice or beans or chopped veggies so they're ready to go, making cooking healthy meals much easier. This planning habit extends to when they're not at home as well. If they're going out to a restaurant, they check the menu online before they go and decide what they'll order so they're not making an impulsive decision in the moment. If they're going to be away from home, they pack snacks so they don't end up starving and heading through the drive-thru later on. If they're going to be at a party, they eat something before they go so they're not making buffet choices on an empty stomach. And maybe also, if it's appropriate, they bring a healthy dish that they can enjoy. Are you currently doing this kind of planning ahead of time in order to set yourself up for success? Or are you just hoping for the best? Let's move on to the next thing that nutritionists do, and that is that they plan indulgences and they enjoy them. I think people often assume that as nutritionists, we don't ever indulge in junk food, but that's not the case at all. I love French fries and chocolate cake just as much as you do, and I know that my fellow nutritionists are the same. What nutritionists do differently is they include these foods in their plans for the week, and then they fully enjoy them without any guilt. So instead of promising themselves to never eat junk food and then beating themselves up when they inevitably do, they simply make space for the foods they enjoy, even the ones that might not completely line up with their commitment to health. So for example, when they're planning their meals for the week, they might look at their calendar, notice they're going out one evening to celebrate a friend's birthday. They know there's going to be cake there, and that means they have two options. They can choose to set a boundary and decide that having cake that evening won't serve them. Or if they know that the restaurant they're going to makes one of the best cakes in the city, they might choose to plan that as an indulgence for themselves. They'll decide ahead of time that they'll have one small piece of cake and enjoy every bite of it slowly and mindfully. I hate the term cheat meals because there's no cheating here. They're taking control, they're planning what they're going to eat, and they're fully enjoying it. They don't beat themselves up when they eat the cake because it was part of the plan. That means they don't feel deprived, and they leave the restaurant still feeling in control and proud of themselves, which prevents them from falling into that all too common trap of feeling like you totally messed up, so now you might as well eat everything. You know what I'm talking about there, right? So, are you currently planning and enjoying one or two indulgences every week? Or are you promising yourself you won't eat those foods and then beating yourself up when you inevitably do? Another thing nutritionists do that you might not be doing is they tend to eat mindfully. It's so common these days for people to be eating mindlessly, meaning they're eating while watching TV, scrolling through their phones, reading, working, driving, rushing around doing other things. They're not really focused on the act of eating when they're doing it. The result is almost always overeating, meaning either eating when your body isn't truly hungry or eating more than your body actually needs. Nutritionists tend to understand how important it is to be fully present and conscious when they're eating so that they can listen to the subtle signals their body is sending them about what they should eat and when they've had enough. So, as often as they can when they're eating, they'll try to avoid multitasking. They'll put away their phone, turn off the TV, move away from their work desk, and give all of their attention and focus to the act of eating. They'll slow down, chew more, notice how the food smells, tastes, and feels in their mouth. They might take a moment before they eat to offer gratitude for the meal and everyone who contributed to it ending up on their plate. They'll pay attention to how their body feels after each bite, and when they feel satisfied, they'll stop eating, even if there's food left and even if it tastes really good. By eating more mindfully in this way, they improve their digestion and they rarely overeat. How often are you eating mindfully these days? And that brings me to the next thing that nutritionists do, and that is that they focus on eating whole foods. As I'm sure you've witnessed in the media and online, even within the nutrition community, there is a broad spectrum of different eating approaches. There are nutritionists who are plant-based or vegan, and there are those who follow a paleo or keto approach that relies really heavily on animal products. There are nutritionists who advocate eating every 2 or 3 hours, and there are those who swear by the idea of intermittent fasting or going for stretches of 12 to 24 hours without food. Nutritionists have differing views about gluten, dairy, grains, soy. But one thing I think that all nutritionists agree on is the importance of eating a mostly whole food diet. What we mean by whole food diet is a diet made up of foods that are as close to the way Mother Nature created them as possible, so as little processing as possible. Nutritionists are typically going to be using lots of single ingredient foods: rice, beans, carrots, fish, spinach, right? They're going to be avoiding packaged foods with long lists of unpronounceable ingredients. And if you think about food processing as sort of a spectrum, they're going to be opting for foods as close to the unprocessed end of that spectrum as possible. So brown rice over white rice, steel cut oats over instant oatmeal, a whole apple over apple juice, that kind of thing. So when you think about what you're typically eating right now, would it be considered a whole foods diet? Another thing nutritionists do that you might not be doing is they're generally pretty good at separating food and feelings. Very often, the reason that people are making unhealthy food choices is that they're either consciously or subconsciously trying to use food to avoid or numb uncomfortable feelings. They're feeling stressed or tired or sad, and Whether they're aware of it or not, they're reaching for food to soothe themselves. I like to say that we're trying to fit a food-shaped peg into a feeling-shaped hole. They don't really fit together properly. So while the food may offer some temporary distraction and enjoyment, it's not addressing the underlying cause of those feelings, so it's not actually fixing anything. Most nutritionists are keenly aware of the food-feeling connection. They see their clients falling into it time and time again. And so often they've taken the time and done the work to separate food and feelings in their own lives. They use food to fuel and nourish their bodies, and they have other more effective and healthy ways of coping with their feelings, like self-care, meditation, or journaling. How are you currently doing with separating food and feelings? Could it be that right now you're often eating as a way to manage your feelings? Again, this is one of those 5 eating languages that I mentioned earlier. If you want to find out which eating language your brain falls into, check out the quiz again that I've left the link to in the description below. It's kind of fun, and I think you'll learn a lot. The next thing that nutritionists do when it comes to eating is they tend to think of themselves as someone who makes healthy choices. And it's possible that right now, that's not how you see yourself. You see, the kind of person that you believe you are plays a huge role in how successful you will be at making healthy choices consistently. James Clear, the author of the best-selling book Atomic Habits, says that the key to building lasting healthy habits is focusing on creating a new identity first. Your current behaviors are simply a reflection of your current identity. What you do now is a mirror image of the type of person you believe that you are, either consciously or subconsciously. So if you think of yourself as someone for whom this is really hard, someone who is addicted to junk food, someone who can't stay on track for very long, then that's all going to be directly reflected in your behaviors. You can only act like the person you believe yourself to be. But if, like many nutritionists do, you think of yourself as someone for whom healthy choices are a non-negotiable priority, someone who makes time for taking care of themselves, someone who enjoys how it feels to be in control of their food choices, then that is what's going to be reflected in your behaviors. Like I said, you act like the person you believe yourself to be. Clear says true behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of your identity. Nutritionists make it look easy simply because making healthy choices has become part of their identity. They think of themselves as someone who makes healthy choices. So they do. So what do you think your current identity around food is? Do you think of yourself as someone who struggles to stay on track, or as someone who naturally and happily gravitates towards the choices that will best serve your long-term health and happiness? If you want to get even more behind the scenes with how I navigate food as a nutritionist, watch this video next on exactly what I eat in a day, chocolate and carbs included. You'll even get to see my favorite go-to snack for the evening when I know those cravings can sometimes feel overpowering. I have a system for that, so you're going to want to watch this one next.